Meeting with LeBron James as a father. Stop this. Stop this. We all know that Bronny James is in the NBA because of his dad.
I would be happy about getting to the league instead of me thinking about playing with my dad.
He's got humility to him. He doesn't act like he's privileged, but they treat him, the coaches treat him like he's privileged because he's that guy's son, and he was the 55th pick in the draft.
The noise around Bronny James has reached a wild level, where almost every possession gets picked apart like a replay on loop. One missed jumper sparks a fresh argument, one quiet stretch turns into a trending topic, and one coaching decision suddenly has people wondering if something bigger is happening behind the curtain. Recently, fans have been calling out what they see as a strange pattern with his playing time. The discussion is no longer just about growth and development. Now it's mixed with suspicion, pressure, and questions about whether the plan for Bronny is moving forward or getting stuck under the massive expectations attached to his name. When you really look at how quickly opinions are changing, it doesn't even feel like people are watching a normal rookie journey anymore. It feels like they're watching a famous basketball legacy get tested in real time, with every game becoming another checkpoint in the conversation. Bronny's situation with the Lakers was never going to look like the path of a typical second-round pick. That much was clear from the start. The second he entered the league, he wasn't judged like an ordinary rookie guard trying to find his footing. Instead, he landed under a spotlight usually reserved for established stars and franchise faces. Whether it was summer league, preseason action, or limited NBA appearances, the reaction has often lived at two extremes. Some people celebrate every good play like it proves everything, while others break down every mistake as if it settles the entire debate once and for all. Now that his role has bounced between NBA opportunities and developmental assignments, more questions have started showing up. Fans keep asking why there isn't a steady pattern, why the minutes keep shifting, why the rhythm looks uneven, and why one game he's visible while the next he barely sees the floor. That's where the conversation starts drifting away from performance and into perception.
When he was missing shots, if you see the shots he's taking, he know what he's doing, right? He's creating the space, he has a setback, he's just not used to it yet.
Because when you break it down, Bronny isn't really being handled like a traditional rookie learning through consistent game reps. His development has come in pieces, short opportunities, specific situations, and carefully managed exposure. In some stretches, he looks locked in on defense, staying active away from the ball, making smart reads, and playing within the system like a pro. In other moments, the offensive confidence people want to see hasn't fully appeared yet, and that's when the criticism gets loud. Online, people throw around scoring totals, usage rates, NBA minutes, and G League numbers as proof that something isn't adding up. But that take can miss an important detail. A lot of young guards need time to adjust to NBA speed, timing, and decision-making before everything starts clicking.
I am pleading with LeBron James as a father. Stop this. Stop this. We all know that Bronny James is in the NBA because of his dad.
For anyone who has followed high-pressure sports stories before, this whole situation probably feels very familiar already. The spotlight gets heavy, the chatter gets louder, and every small development suddenly becomes headline material. It's a pattern that shows up all the time in structured competition settings, where opportunities are split, evaluated, and constantly adjusted to measure growth instead of rewarding instant results. Think about training camp battles where players aren't simply handed a role. They have to earn it through repetition, consistency, and performance over time. The public might watch one or two plays and assume the pecking order is already set, but behind the scenes, everything is still changing. Coaches aren't focused on a single highlight or one mistake. They're watching the bigger picture: consistency, decision-making, reactions to adversity, and how players adjust when pressure rises. That's the process Bronny is going through right now, even if many people on the outside see it as instability. What some fans are calling strange usage actually looks a lot more like controlled exposure and ongoing evaluation. One game, he may receive extended minutes in a developmental setting where growth is the priority. The next, he might step into a smaller NBA role where defense, effort, and ball movement matter more than putting up points. From the outside, that can look confusing, but inside the organization, it can be part of a deliberate testing process. The problem is that in today's social media world, testing often gets mistaken for uncertainty, and uncertainty quickly turns into a major storyline. Once those storylines start gaining traction online, everything gets viewed through a different lens. Suddenly, a missed jumper isn't just a missed jumper anymore. It becomes a talking point about whether he's ready or not. Here's the angle that rarely gets enough attention. Development for young guards is almost never a straight path, especially when they're being judged in two very different competitive environments at the same time.
He's in that locker room with his dad, who happens to be one of the greatest players in the history of basketball. It's just not a distraction that I think a new coach, who's a rookie head coach, in J.J. Redick and his staff and others should have to deal with.
One environment encourages experimentation and learning, while the other
One environment encourages experimentation and learning, while the other demands immediate execution and punishes mistakes much faster. That combination can create what looks like inconsistency to fans watching from the outside, but within the system, it often serves as a built-in pressure test designed to reveal how a player responds when circumstances change. The goal isn't always to make everything look polished right away. It's to see how players adapt when the challenge level shifts unexpectedly. That's why comparisons to other structured competition systems keep coming up. In situations where opportunities are shared and roles are still being sorted out, nobody assumes every rotation decision is permanent. Evaluation is expected to continue. Yet with Bronny, nearly every change in playing time gets treated like a final verdict. That's the difference between watching development and chasing narratives. And whether the Lakers intended it or not, Bronny has ended up on one of the most visible development paths in basketball. Every decision gets examined, every rotation sparks debate, and every quiet stretch suddenly becomes evidence for somebody's latest theory. Now add the legacy factor into the mix, and the entire conversation gets even louder. Bronny isn't just another rookie trying to earn minutes and find his place in the league. He's the son of one of the greatest basketball players ever. And that reality changes how people view every part of his journey. For most young players, inconsistency is expected and accepted as part of the learning process. For Bronny, inconsistency often becomes a major debate. If he puts together a few strong stretches, people immediately ask why he isn't playing more. If he struggles, others start questioning his place altogether. Right now, there seems to be very little middle ground in how people react to him. Everything gets magnified through the lens of his last name. That kind of attention creates a unique challenge, because when every performance is judged at the extremes, it becomes easy for a young player to feel pressure to prove something on every possession. That's one of the biggest traps athletes can fall into under a spotlight this bright. Instead of simply playing within the system and letting the game come naturally, some players start chasing moments that will change the conversation. They force difficult plays, hunt for highlights, or try to create instant proof that they belong. Ironically, that approach usually slows growth rather than speeding it up. Inside the Lakers organization, though, the priorities appear much less dramatic than the headlines suggest. The focus is likely centered on defensive consistency, quick decision-making, positioning, and whether Bronny can operate effectively within NBA spacing and ball movement concepts. For many developing guards, especially those who are not expected to be primary scorers right away, that foundation comes before offensive production. The public discussion rarely has the patience for that process, though. Fans want answers now. They want immediate results, immediate production, and immediate confirmation about whether a player is succeeding or falling behind.
That's where the tension keeps growing, because the more carefully his minutes are managed, the more some people interpret it as uncertainty. The same thing happens when he moves between different competitive environments. The more his role changes, the more outside observers assume something is wrong behind the scenes. But from a player development perspective, that approach is actually very common for young players adjusting from college-level competition to the speed and complexity of the NBA. The real challenge may not be the plan itself, it may be how visible the plan has become. Every adjustment is discussed, every rotation sparks fresh speculation, and every game seems to generate a new wave of opinions. At the same time, the LeBron factor hangs over the entire situation. LeBron James spent more than 20 years creating a standard that exists far beyond normal basketball expectations. Because of that, Bronny isn't only compared to other rookies, he's often compared to an entire legacy of greatness. That comparison may not be fair from a development standpoint, but it's almost impossible to avoid in today's media landscape. It creates a situation where every small step forward gets measured against an incredibly high benchmark.
Even so, there are signs that meaningful progress is being built beneath all the noise. Defensive effort, awareness away from the ball, smart reads, discipline within the offense, and growing comfort in structured situations all point toward a foundation that continues to develop, even if it isn't always grabbing headlines. Those are not the types of things that usually trend online, but they are often the details that determine whether a player builds a lasting NBA career. The challenge is that steady improvement, smart positioning, defensive effort, and strong decision-making rarely create viral moments. Modern sports conversations are often driven by big highlights, hot takes, and dramatic reactions instead. That's where the larger debate around Bronny starts getting even more intense. Is the Lakers' approach helping him develop under controlled pressure, or is the constant movement between different roles creating more questions than answers? Some fans believe he needs consistent minutes in one setting to establish confidence and rhythm. Others argue that experiencing NBA speed and competition, even in smaller stretches, provides valuable lessons that can help more in the long run. Both viewpoints have gained support, and both are being formed without access to every detail behind the scenes. The reality is that this is exactly the kind of situation where patience and perception collide head-on. The development process itself may be working as intended, but because every move is happening in public view, it can appear far more unstable than it actually is. And when a player carries one of the most recognizable names in sports, many people expect certainty long before the process is complete. As the season moves forward, the discussion surrounding Bronny James is unlikely to cool down anytime soon. In fact, it could become even louder. Every adjustment in playing time will be examined. Every productive stretch will generate excitement. Every quiet performance will trigger a new round of questions and speculation. Meanwhile, the evaluation taking place behind the scenes will likely remain focused on a much simpler goal: long-term growth rather than moment-to-moment reactions. That's the part many people overlook while chasing the latest storyline. And that brings the conversation to the question fans will keep debating. Is Bronny being carefully prepared for a future role through a deliberate development plan, or is the constant balancing act between expectations, competitive environments, and public narratives making the road more complicated than it needs to be as he searches for his true NBA rhythm and identity? What makes this situation even more fascinating is how quickly public opinion swings from one extreme to the other. Instead, attention usually shifts toward points, highlights, and box score numbers. That disconnect has created an interesting gap between what fans are tracking and what teams typically value during player development. Organizations often focus on habits, effort, discipline, and how players respond to challenges over time. Those qualities may not grab attention online, but they can play a huge role in determining who eventually earns a long-term place in the league. Another factor adding pressure is the expectation that progress should happen immediately. In today's sports world, many people want clear answers as fast as possible. They want to know who is succeeding, who is struggling, and who belongs. But development rarely follows a straight timeline, especially for young players adjusting to higher levels of competition. For Bronny, that means every step forward may continue to be met with another round of scrutiny. Every improvement could spark new expectations, and every setback could trigger fresh criticism. That's the reality of developing under one of the brightest spotlights in basketball. The biggest, and every coaching decision becomes part of a larger discussion. That level of attention isn't going away anytime soon. The real test won't be what happens over a few games or even a few months. It will be how he continues to develop, adapt, and respond as the challenges become bigger and the spotlight remains locked on him. That's what will ultimately shape the next chapter of his career. For now, fans will keep watching, analysts will keep debating, and every new opportunity will add another piece to the story. Whether you believe the current development plan is the perfect approach or think things should be handled differently, there's no denying that Bronny remains one of the most talked about young players in basketball right now.